Hello, everybody. Everyone hear me okay? Thanks. My sound check way in the back there. There's my kids back there. My name is Courtney Perdios, and I'm co-president of Citywide PTO. On behalf of our other co-president, Scout Alessandro, and the many members of Citywide, I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight for our school committee candidates night. We'd also like to thank the candidates for generously giving us their time this evening to answer questions that are important to you. Before we jump right into the action, we wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about our group. Citywide PTO brings parents and families from all over Quincy Public Schools together to discuss issues on a broader citywide level. We are proud to be the link between your school, the school committee, and the superintendent's office. All of our meetings are open to the public, and we encourage all to attend. Tonight's event actually took the place of our October meeting, so our next meeting will be on November 6th at 7 p.m. at Broadmeadows Middle School. To stay connected to Citywide, you can email us at pto.citywide@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook under Quincy Citywide Parents Council Citywide PTO. A few notes about the format for tonight's event. We will begin with each candidate giving a 2-minute introduction. This will be followed by 5 questions we will ask all the candidates to answer, and 1 question specific to each candidate. We respectfully ask all candidates to keep their answers to 90 seconds so we can move through all the questions we have prepared. We will flash the 30-second sign when you have 30 seconds left. Then you'll see the stop sign when your 90 seconds are up. After all questions have been asked, candidates will then be allowed 1 minute for concluding remarks. Following our question and answer period, we will move to the lobby just outside the doors for some light refreshments. All of the candidates have graciously agreed to stay until 8:30 to chat with you out there. We've provided you with a sheet of paper that lists each candidate's contact information and a space to write down any additional questions you may have for them. And so, without further ado, I present you the candidates for the school committee. Ms. Geraldine Manning, Mr. Anthony Andronico, Ms. Emily Lebo, Mr. Mark Sauter, Mr. Dave Jacobs, and Mr. Doug-Gutro. We're going to begin our opening remarks with Mr. Doug-Gutro.
All right, thank you. Thank you to Citywide PTO, to Scott and Courtney, and thank you to all of you who came out this evening. I'd also like to begin by thanking Barbara Isola, who's in the audience tonight, as well as Ann Mahoney, for their service to our children during their time in the school committee. Thank you very much, Barbara. A quick bio on me. I'm a proud graduate of Quincy Public Schools. I attended Bernazani, which used to be Furnace Brook Central Junior High School, and I graduated class of 1983 at North Quincy High School. My Quincy Public Schools education helped me to get a bachelor's degree in management at the University of Massachusetts at Boston and a master's degree in public administration from Suffolk University. For those of you in the audience tonight whose children go here to Central or who are involved in youth sports, you might know me better as Brian or Scotty's dad. That's right. I'm the proud father of 2 sons currently attending Quincy Public Schools. Brian's a freshman at Quincy High School, and Scotty is in 8th grade right here at Central Middle School. So I approached the school committee position through the lens of a parent, just like you. Helping with homework, balancing school and extracurricular activities, easing anxieties around MCAS, meeting with teachers, and shuttling my children from point A to point B. I spent 7 terms, as you know, in the Quincy City Council, where I was a strong supporter of public education. I supported 14 school budgets, security improvements citywide, construction of a new Quincy High School, Central Middle School, and Sterling Middle School, and improvements to roofs, windows, and boilers in many schools across the city. I visited every school in this city, either as a parent or as a father. As our enrollment continues to grow, I see challenges, but I also see greatness and opportunities for the Quincy Public School system. I'm running for the school committee because I love our city. I have 2 children in the Quincy Public School system, and I believe my experience in municipal government, as well as teaching, I'm an adjunct professor at Suffolk University, will help make Quincy Public Schools the best in the state. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is David Jacobs, and I am a first-time candidate for Quincy School Committee. I'm a lifelong resident of Quincy, and I graduated from Quincy Public Schools. My wife, Alice, and I live in West Quincy, and we both work for the Boston Public Schools. I'm running to bring equitable opportunity for students to participate in Quincy's educational programs. We currently have numerous programs that run across many schools in the district. Our instructors who facilitate these programs are forced to work around very complex schedules that are developed by school administrators. Because our staff are forced to bounce from school to school, they aren't afforded the control to set their own schedules to meet with students. This causes far too common practice of pulling students out of their core academic courses or simply not allowing them a full-rounded educational experience. This practice pits teachers against one another and often makes students feel as though there is no good option. The district needs to make this practice the exception and not the rule. With leadership and proper management, I think we can make collaborative inter-school schedules that would work better for students and teachers and cause a resurgence in programs that have been dwindling over the past few decades. I also believe that with an increase in testing going on in schools, especially at the lower grade levels, we have limited what was once one of the best joys of childhood, recess. Recently, while knocking doors in a few Quincy neighborhoods, it came to my attention that recess is being limited and that certain parts of fields are being designated no-go areas for students. I want to make sure that students are getting adequate recess every day. Lastly, Quincy's population is growing at an increasing rate. Quincy schools have seen an increase of students attending them. Some neighborhoods have seen larger population growth, such as West Quincy and Quincy Point, which have led to alternative grade configurations for their schools, while other schools have stayed the same or gotten smaller. In Quincy, we pride ourselves in having community schools. It's important moving forward that when we build new schools, we take into account housing units. I want to thank you for your time and of your busy schedule to attend this school committee meeting, this school committee candidates night. And thank you for the Citywide PTO for hosting this event and this school PTOs who do hard work advocating for their child's schools.
All right, thank you. My name is Mark Sauter. I'm running for school committee. Thank you all for coming here tonight. Thank you to Citywide PTO for setting this up. I live in Marymount with my wife Leah, our two young children. Maylee is my daughter, she's 3. Frank is our son, he's 1. Leah's not here tonight, she's dealing with some strep throat. So I'm hoping that that's not going to be me in a few days. Please, someone also remind me I need to get orange juice on the way home today, so a lot of the minds that might slip. But why am I running for school committee? I have a deep passion and dedication towards improving Quincy. The past 4 years, I've been the president of the Marymount Neighborhood Association, which is one of Quincy's largest neighborhood associations. I've served as the president, and I've worked hard to improve the neighborhood for all the residents. I believe I've made a strong impact in our neighborhood, and I want to expand my efforts and energy to the schools as well, with my children coming to the schools in a few years. I also believe my perspective as a father of 2 young children would be an asset to the school committee, which currently does not have any members with young children in it. I believe I can bring fresh ideas, fresh energy to the school committee to benefit all of our students. I have a track record of conceptualizing and obtaining positive change for Quincy's youth. Last year, I started an online petition after contacting the recreation department, and I was able to get the rec department to successfully open a program called Tot Time, which is an indoor play space for Quincy's toddlers in the winter that they didn't have anything like that before. I'm also running for school committee because I'm a fellow public employee. I'm the son of a retired high school teacher and guidance counselor, and I have great respect for our hardworking administrators, teachers, and staff. I was greatly honored to receive an endorsement from the Quincy Education Association a few weeks ago, and I hope to work with Quincy's talented and dedicated educators in the future. Finally, I believe my background in education as an attorney with the federal government would serve as an asset to the school committee as well. Thank you again. I look forward to answering your questions tonight and discussing the important issues facing our school system and our children. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming and thank you for the PTOs for having us here. I'm Emily Lebo. I'm not not going to tell you all about myself because I've given you my brochures. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. But I've been an educator for many years. And I want to talk a little bit about what I did this summer in my role as a parent school committee member. Last June, it was brought to my attention by a teacher in Quincy what happened on the electronic version of the MCAS exam. And what happened on that exam was the students had to do their very best work. I want you to remember that the MCAS is supposed to be a chance for the students to do their best work. They were asked to do their very best work in a writing prompt. And what they had to do was they had to fit the writing prompt into a text box. So when the teacher explained it to me, I checked with the superintendent, and he confirmed that that was the case. So what actually happened was we had educators who teach kids to write, and teach them to write by looking at their work, by revising it, and by editing it, and then creating better copies before they turn it in, like most of you would do if you were going to write a paper. But what they had our children do, on the 8th grade exam, they had a prompt that they had to write a 2-page paper and a 4-page paper. So I just want to show you for a second what a 4-page paper, a 2-page paper looks like. This would be these would be the 2 pages of the 2-page paper that our students were asked to write. This was how much of it they could see at any one time. So even though they wrote 1,000 words, they could only see 130 of it. That's the 2-page paper. So that was 13% of the paper that they could see. On the 4-page paper, it was 6% of the paper that the students could see at any one time. So I drafted a letter to the Commissioner of Education from all the people in the school committee. The mayor signed it, they signed it, we sent it in. And he sent me back a note that was completely disingenuous, saying they understand there are limitations in the program, and they're working with their vendors to improve it. So I didn't stop at that. I've now taken that concern of mine to the Mass Association of School Committees on their November 1st meeting, and I will follow up and make sure that something is done and we don't drop the ball on this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andronico. Obviously, I'm running for school committee here in my hometown of Quincy. First, I'd like to say thank you to the Citywide PTO for hosting us here tonight and providing us an opportunity to speak to all of you. And thank you to all of you who were able to make it here tonight. So a little about myself. I'm a 4th-generation Quincy resident, and my family's lived just about everywhere in the city of Quincy. I grew up in Wollaston. I went to Wollaston Elementary School, went to the old Central Middle School, not this one, and North Quincy High School. And after my time in Quincy Public Schools, I moved on to Emmanuel College, where I had the opportunity to study local government and economics. Excuse me. My first job out of college was at a company called Mass Insight. And Mass Insight worked to combine university, industry, and government to overcome challenges in education and financial services. Now, specifically in education, the work that we did was trying to overcome the achievement and opportunity gap in gateway cities across Massachusetts. And we did this by increasing AP participation, bolstering organizational structures, and partnering with the local community. And that work is really what I'm trying to continue now when I'm running for school committee. Now, I don't do that now. Right now, I work for a company called Forrester in Cambridge, providing best practices to business technology firms. So my own experiences have really shaped the 3 things that I'm looking to accomplish during my time on the Quincy School Committee. The first of which is to increase opportunities for students to gain college credit. It's increasingly more difficult for students and families to pay for college and continue their education, and I think that we can be doing more. I also want to provide more opportunities for the public to engage with the school committee both in person and online. And the last thing I'm looking to do is to maintain smaller class sizes in the face of growing enrollment. We're up about 500 students over the last decade, and so we'll need to be paying attention to that number. So thank you very much, and I'm Anthony Andronico.
I'm Geraldine Manning, and I have come to run because I have a deep affection for Quincy. And I went through the public school system, K through 12. I started out in the Squantum School, then went to Atlantic Junior High, and then went on to North Quincy High School. From North Quincy High School, I went 1 year to Quincy Junior College. And after that, I transferred to Suffolk University. And then got an AB from Suffolk, and got a master's degree from Boston College and a PhD from Boston College. I'm a sociologist. For those of you who may not know, sociologists study groups, social change, and have, heaven help us, 56 areas of specialty. One of my areas of specialty is education. And I'm interested in making sure that our students are prepared for the 21st century, because this requires a lot of change in the school systems, and I want to make sure that our kids are getting the benefit that they deserve, that they should have a good school system. I think I'll tell you, based on the Massachusetts statistics, Quincy schools are not too highly evaluated. This is all in, if you'd like to look, Boston Magazine's most recent issue. And they use the Massachusetts state statistics as their guideline. And what they say is that North Quincy High has an 82nd percent reputation out of 155 schools and towns, and Quincy High School has a 92nd percentile. So you make your own decision. I don't think that's acceptable.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our questions. Each candidate will be asked a question. A question will be asked, and each candidate will have a chance to answer it. We'll start first with Mr. Jacobs. What are 2 new initiatives you will actively work to implement as a school committee member, and walk us through how you would make that happen?
So, one initiative that I think I mentioned already that I'd really like to see is some type of parity in scheduling, especially across the middle school level. I did not mention this in my opening, but I am current secretary of the nonprofit Quincy Band Boosters, and we see at the last 5-6 years we've been around that we see kind of a drop in students in our program in the middle school level, and a lot of it is based around scheduling. Kids come to middle school, they're basically told they can't, they go to class and they're not doing well in their academic class, and as I said, it kind of makes it for an awkward situation between the 2 educators and the student, and we feel that if more attention had been spent on scheduling and utilizing our resources that we have, we could kind of engineer that problem away. So I would work with other school committee members in the administration to try and, as I said, make the exception not a rule. We don't want to be pulling kids out of their academic classes. One of the other things I'd also like to work on is grade school configuration. Some of the schools in Quincy have different school configurations. They go up to 4th grade, and then middle schools have 5th grades in them, and that also goes to a detriment of scheduling for some of our programs that we have across the districts. But I would work with the school committee in order to do that, and thank you.
So same question, 2 initiatives that I would try to push if elected to the school committee. The first one that I'd try to push is expanding foreign language education to earlier grades. Right now in Quincy, we offer Spanish and French at the 8th grade level. I think the overwhelming research indicates that it is very difficult to learn a foreign language if you're not starting in earnest until that time of your life. So we need to start at an earlier age. We also need to, in my opinion, expand our foreign language offerings to include Chinese Mandarin. You look in our city, we have a large population that hails from China. Many are immigrants, many are first-generation residents who may speak Mandarin. I think it's important to add that language so more people in the city have a greater understanding of that language and culture. Boston also is the top tourism market for Chinese visitors. Companies in Boston are hiring people who are able to speak Mandarin. It's also incredibly important on the international business level. So how do we accomplish something like that? We look at other schools, other districts that have added language at an earlier level. We get the best practices, we do research into it, we engage PTOs, we engage the teachers union, we engage the city council, the mayor's office to get funding for something like that. Another initiative that I would push, has been mentioned here already, is mandating recess for our young students in Quincy. Again, we look to other cities and school districts that have that and see how they've done it, how they've been able to squeeze it into the day, and we copy those best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. So one thing that I would definitely do is try to work on getting more common planning time for our elementary teachers. They do a lot, they have a lot of specialists who push into their classrooms. They have a lot of literacy specialists, but they don't have a lot of time in their schedule where they can meet together and look at student assessment data together. So they have people coming in and people are sharing it, but they really need more time at the elementary level to have common planning time so that they can get the interventions to the students, and so the teachers can have time to talk about the students. We do a great job with our professional development. We have teacher leaders who do a lot of our professional development, and it's wonderful, but I do think that they need more common planning time at the elementary level. The other thing that I would like to do is, I'd like to find a way with technology that we could do a graduate follow-up. Right now, when our students leave our schools, about 67% of them say they're going to a 4-year school. Another 17% say they're going to a 2-year school. I think 7% say they're going to work, and 2% say they're going into the military. But we have no way of finding out if that's true or how they manage their next steps in their lives. And I would like our schools to start doing that. It's been tried before, it's difficult. But I think with technology, there are ways to do that now through social media, that we can tap into these kids and find out if they were prepared for the next phase of their lives and how well prepared they were.
Thank you. So 2 initiatives that I would take if I was elected to the Quincy School Committee. I know this has already been touched upon, is the mandating recess across elementary school levels, so I won't go too far into that. But the first idea that I had actually stems from a Quincy Citywide PTO meeting I attended in the spring, where parents were discussing school-to-parent communication and how it's not always standardized within a potential school. Right, you'll have a couple kids, you'll have one in 1st grade, you'll have one in 5th grade, and the 5th grade teacher will send out notices in a different manner than the 1st grade teacher. And for parents, it's very difficult to always keep track of where the ultimate source of truth is going to come from. So one thing I'd really like to do is revamp the Quincy Public Schools website. The City of Quincy website was just redone, and I think it's time that the Quincy Public Schools website was done over as well. So it's easy for parents and interested community members to find the information that they're looking for. Now, the second thing that I'd like to do is to increase the number of dual enrollment programs we have in conjunction with Quincy College. The way that it works right now is you pay $250 for a course at Quincy or North Quincy High, and it's administered by a Quincy College licensed teacher, and then you get college credit for that course. I think that by partnering further with Quincy College, we would be able to see the number of credits students exit our system with to increase, and thus lowering their continuing education bill. So those are the 2 things I'd like to do.
One thing that I'd like to offer to Mark is that the Quincy Public Schools did put in foreign language in the elementary grades. When I went to elementary school, we had foreign language in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. That to me, so there's some data there. So anyway, I would suggest that we look at some interdisciplinary courses, like math and art, design and technology, because we have to teach students, and this is a sad thing, to think outside the box. Americans were very good at this at one point in time, and now that we all interact with computers, I think we have reduced that skill level. Also, we need to talk about the possibility of getting grants. There are millions of dollars out there for education in the 21st century. We need to bring some of that grant money to Quincy.
So, the city of Quincy has roughly a $300 million budget. Slightly more than a third of that budget is Quincy Public Schools. I'm concerned about an economic downturn that could happen, within the country or globally. And last time that we witnessed that, we saw that there was an impact on some of the schools. So my sense is that there would be value in exploring a rainy day fund for the schools. That we have a set aside, so when those moments happen where there's an economic downturn, we don't go back. We can still go forward as a school system. The second issue that is extraordinary nationwide, but especially here in Norfolk County, is substance abuse prevention. And I know that we have a pretty strong program here in the city of Quincy, but there are always new, novel, different ways to do it. I know the mayor has invested in the school committee, the school system has invested heavily in that. But I think for the health and the well-being of our kids, we need to stay vigilant, more so now than ever, around that issue. I also support exploring the foreign language issue, but one of the things that I think are important that we as a governing body, a school committee, should look at is letting the experts, the folks that work in school policy every day, and letting the parents have some wisdom and some say in what those new initiatives should be. And that's one of the things that I would do with my experience in the city council, is value the neighborhood schools and get some input from the PTOs and the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. For our second question, we're going to begin with Mr. Sauter. If elected, what will you do to help deepen and broaden diversity and inclusiveness within the context of classroom and curriculum? Yeah. If elected, what will you do to help deepen and broaden diversity and inclusiveness within the context of classroom and curriculum?
Okay. So, what I mentioned when I was on the microphone previously, expanding the foreign language offerings, I think that would help broaden our diversity, cultural makeup in the schools. If you're exposed to different languages, you're also going to be exposed to the cultures from those languages. We would also, I think the high schools do a great job of pushing some study abroad trips during the school vacations. I think that's also a way to increase people's understanding of diversity, cultural backgrounds. I think we also need to look at the teacher base. If we are satisfied that we have enough diversity with our teachers. I know Boston looks at this, all large urban districts face this issue. But again, if you're seeing diversity in the classroom, from the teachers, that's also going to help with the issue. I know Marymount, in the elementary school there, they do a program where they have a cultural night, and the different students with their different backgrounds are able to have a table, offer different food options, different things from that cultural background. I think that's a great program. Hopefully that can be done across the whole city. So those are a few of the things, but I think the main issue I think that would really assist with this is increasing foreign language education at an earlier age, because if you are able to try to learn a new language, you're also going to be learning about the cultures and different diversities from that country. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Lebo, same question.
So I think that part of the issue is I think that we need to develop some more cultural competence among our staff. I think that we don't often know when we offend or when we can be offensive, and I think that it's helpful if we have some professional development around that. I know the high school started that last year at North Quincy High School, and it's moved down into Quincy High School, and they actually had some experts come in and help educators learn how to speak to people without causing any kind of, trying to not cause offense. It's not that easy. The cultural competence is a buzzword that's everywhere in education, because people people can be offended by words, a certain choice of words. So when I think about inclusiveness, I think more about our students with disabilities, and I think that we have done a great job and need to continue to do that job to make sure those students are included and have access to the curriculum as much as anybody else does, with supports wrapped around so that they can access the curriculum and can have the same kind of great education that every other student has in the city of Quincy, so that when they exit it, they have a plan. So that's where I would look for inclusion.
Thank you. I think the one area that you always need to keep in mind is that the earlier you start education on any topic, the more it seeps through into young people and students. So I think what you do is you start earlier on in the elementary level. You have cultural diversity nights, right? And we used to have them in Central. We had them in North Quincy High School when I was there. So you had a better opportunity to fully understand the cultures that are within your own school. So I think as a school committee member, it's important to continue to foster those relationships and push for those type of nights in particular. And I know Emily had just brought this up, but continuing teacher learning and development specifically in this area, so that teachers fully understand, when to step in, what conversations they can foster within the classroom to make all potential challenges a learning opportunity for everybody involved. So I think it's really important that you take a two-pronged approach, right? You have one where you focus on teacher learning and development, and you have the other where you sort of try to include the whole community in this discussion. So that's good.
One of the things that I have done in my lifetime is a lot of work in diversity. I was, I guess I'd say, the key person who brought cultural diversity to Suffolk University as a course, and it became a requirement. I would, in the classroom, emphasize that we build on who is there and let the students share their experiences of their cultural group to the other students in the class. That gives us two things. It gets them talking, which is something that over time they lose confidence in participating, in talking. They get scared to talk to a real human being. And also in the curriculum, I would certainly look at books that give them a slice of diversity and give them a perspective on another culture, because that's very important that students learn about other cultures. Okay.
It was Stephen Covey that said, first seek to understand, then to be understood. On the curriculum issue, I think people like Barbara and Emily probably know, and many of the teachers in the room full well, what we're doing, what is in and what isn't in the curriculum. This gets back to what I said earlier about us as members, future members of the school committee, learning from the professionals about what's in the curriculum and what's not in the curriculum. So I can't speak to that. But I can tell you, when I was city council president, I hosted a cultural competency training for the city clerk's office, the city council's office, which many other departments, including the library, human resources, IT, sent folks to attend. That's one of the things that we as a city must value, and it was co-sponsored by Quincy Asian Resources, and we had a great turnout, and people said it was transformational in terms of how they interacted with the customers that come in, say, to the tax office or into the library. It was extraordinarily helpful. So, cultural competency training is already worthwhile, and it may well be happening. I agree with Emily in terms of, or I think it was Mark, on teacher recruitment. Basically having a workforce that looks like the population that we serve is incredibly important as well. And I think Emily's point about disabilities was an excellent point. There are folks that have access issues or concerns, and that falls into the inclusiveness issue. And frankly, it's a matter of simply getting up to speed on a lot of these issues. When you sit at the school committee meetings, it'd be like somebody, well, I'll finish that up, I got to stop signing. But I'll add to that in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. So I agree with Mark and Anthony about exposing kids to language at an earlier age. I think that's a great idea to have foreign language in the younger grades, when they're more ready to learn and acquire a new language skill. Sometimes I think the only reason we have foreign language at the high school level is because it's mandated to get into college. You have to take a certain amount of years of foreign language at the high school level. I also agree with the cultural nights. This last spring, it was in May, I went to the Clifford Marshall cultural night. It was a great event. The temperature inside the room was 112 degrees. There were so many people in there. I met a lot of my friends that I had gone to high school with that now had kids that were attending school there. And I was amazed to see just how many cultural backgrounds there were in the school. And those events are important for kids, but they're important for the parents to see the diversity of the school that their kids are attending. I also think that arts education is a good way to spread cultural diversity. You can do plays that are from different cultural backgrounds. At my school last year, we did Once Upon This Island. I thought it was great. In Boston, we used an ELA curriculum called Expeditionary Learning. I was exposed to it last year for the first time, and I was absolutely floored with how diverse it was in the texts that they were using. And the kids learn from them just like they learn from any other text. So, thank you.
Thank you. This third question, we'll start with Ms. Lebo. So, best case, worst case for school funding. Best case scenario with surplus funding, what areas would you enhance? Worst case scenario with a deficit budget, what program or initiative would you cut?
Boy, that is a tough question. The enhancing is not that tough. It's not tough at all. I think that one of the things that I would like to see enhanced is certainly all of the things that went away when the budget cuts came. So the technology engineering at the middle school, the media library specialist, which I was instrumental in getting back into the middle school because the superintendent actually said that he wasn't sure he was going to replace the librarians because he thought they didn't need people to just check out books. And I said to him, you have to come see what a library looks like. And I took him to Newton Public Schools. I talked to the people at Simmons College, and they said Newton had the best middle school libraries in the world. And I took the superintendent on a field trip to Newton Public Schools. And when he saw her, he put the librarians back in. So I think those kind of things we have to make sure that the kids have access to a full range of abilities. And I would like to see some, it's not so much guidance enhancement, but some social emotional development enhancement. I think the recess question handles a little bit of it, but not enough of it. I really think that we need some social emotional development and some specialties, some work around that for our kids. Our elementary schools are seeing some challenges with some students' behavior, and I think that this could really help that. As far as the budget cuts, I was involved in the district, working in the district when those cuts took place. They are the most painful things in the world, and unfortunately, the superintendent, and I agree with him, he has a plan where you start in the middle and you don't cut the classroom teachers. You might have to start cutting some programs beyond that, but you never ever cut the classroom teachers. And we pared that budget down as much as we could before we got to anybody that was teaching a student. And things like the librarians left, some of the music programs left, a lot of the directors were cut at that point in time because we stayed away from the classroom teachers. And that's what I would do again, is stay away from the classroom teachers no matter what. And if you look at his chart, the further out you get, I wouldn't say it's the less important they are, but the less of a touch they have on the kids' daily life. And that's what we have to make sure we don't cut.
Thank you. So as far as, we have the opportunity to increase funding in Quincy Public Schools, fingers crossed we get that opportunity. I think you need to start with technology funding. I know as most of the PTOs here in the city of Quincy know, the fall festivals and all the fundraisers that you've done have been centered around increasing technology funding, and specifically Chromebooks and necessary tech resources for your kids. And I think that that's specifically an area that's been highlighted that Quincy Public Schools can do a better job to get that funding to invest back into our school system. So I think that's where you start. As far as what areas would you want to cut, if you unfortunately have a budget downturn. Back when I was in high school, I took woodshop. I took carpentry for 2 years, and I came out of the class with an OSHA certification. And that was one of the programs that was being discussed as being cut. And I went to a school committee meeting to voice my opposition to that cut. And it's never a fun thing to ever have to do. But to Emily's point, the way that we structure the budget, you start with absolutely essential things in the middle. And the further out you go is the further away you are from a touch to a student and teachers that impact their everyday learning. So that's where you start. I would look at the historical cuts, and we most likely need to start there. Cutting's never a fun thing to do, so again, let's hope that we only need to increase the budget. Thank you.
I would be a person who would definitely keep teachers. They're not the place to cut. If you had to cut, I would cut in the directors of programs. I would cut in the heads of departments in terms of money. But I think you keep the teachers in the classroom, because without that, we're really up the creek.
Investments, more teachers, smaller class size would be what would drive me, number one. Number two would be technology, and number three would be around curriculum, STEM, literacy, ELL. All of those, I think, are important in our school system. The worst case scenario, what would you cut? Emily, this is the chart that the superintendent passes out, which is a terrific chart. I mean, they have a very thoughtful team where the students are at the center, academic classroom teachers, academic programs, academic support, then it's non-academic support, subsidized programs, academic expenses, and non-academic expenses you go forward. They're miserable choices, but it is a thoughtful model, the way that he deals with it. He and his team deal with it, and they come up with a variety of different options that they bring back before the school committee. And I only know this because I've gone through 14 budgets as a city councilor, and I've had the superintendent and his team present to us. And I know the difficulty, the debate that the school committee has around some of those issues and making those choices, because the buck stops with the school committee. City council ultimately authorizes the budget, but the school committee has the discretion to do it. But I think the model the superintendent has is a smart and wise model. And then when you serve on the school committee, you have an opportunity to understand what fits into each of those categories and use some discretion around that. Thank you.
I'll start with the enhancements as well. I would definitely agree with Emily in regarding the social emotional development. We have a lot of students who have special needs and require a lot of social emotional support. Currently, Quincy Public Schools uses contractors for BCBAs and ABAs. If we had additional funds, I would look to move those programs in-house. Contractors tend to move in and out of the district. You know, the company will move them even in the middle of the year. By bringing those people in-house, we'll be able to have some continuity for the students involved in those programs. I'd also want to increase arts education. It was a big part of why I liked to go to school when I was a kid. And I was in band. I wasn't any good, but I enjoyed the social aspects of it. And I've enjoyed working with the band boosters to build awareness and fund some of the programs here in Quincy. I also can't say enough about library media studies. I mean, they are more than just librarians. I had Miss Donovan at Broadmeadows, who was a librarian, and those of you who are out there holding my palm card right now, I made that myself, and all those skills she taught me, that was over 15 years ago, so she was doing something right. As for cuts, I would cut from the administration. I do think the administration here, there's a lot of them. I think that they make quite a bit of money. You know, I would make sure that their salaries were cut before any programs were cut. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. This is, more than a theoretical exercise. I mean, in terms of the enhancements, next year on the ballot is the Fair Share Amendment, which would raise taxes, on the top 1% in Massachusetts. And that money is supposed to be dedicated to public education. So hopefully there's your enhancements. In terms of the cuts, we're also looking at, there's been proposed federal education cuts from Washington, D.C. So right there, there's your cut. So this is something that I hope we're looking at more than just tonight. So let's play the enhancement. I agree about the arts and music programs. Would love for the band to be fully supported. Make sure that they have the new uniforms that they've been promised. Make sure that they have the equipment and the other resources to make sure that we have a band that we can all be very proud of here in Quincy. I'd love to expand the after-school and summer learning programs. There's a lot of people in Quincy who can't afford some of the summer camps that other students go to. So it's important to have to make sure that they're not on wait lists and that everybody's able to access those programs. Also, an investment that I think would pay off in the long term is expanding our pre-K program here in Quincy to be able to get more students into that pre-K program. Okay, so in terms of the cuts, I think first we want to make sure that we actually do need to make the cuts, or can we save any money on energy? The energy bills for our schools are incredibly high. So are we doing as much as we can in terms of solar and other energy efficient technology? But if we have to, I'd be looking at classes that have few students participating in them. Perhaps we could combine some of those classes. Also, if we're only going to offer 2 languages, I think adding Chinese instead of French, so you might have to cut a French language course. I think that might make some sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, we're going to start with Mr. Andronico. With a new elementary school coming online during your term, will you leverage this opportunity to standardize grade configuration between elementary schools across the city?
Thank you for your question. I know this has actually been debated before, this past spring, the Quincy School Committee, and there were some good points raised on each side. Personally, I don't think that we would need to standardize the elementary and middle school grades. The reason being, when you have 5th graders involved, 5th graders with 6th, 7th, and 8th, it actually speeds up their development and enhances their social learning skills. And there's some advantages to entering them into a middle school environment earlier. So I don't think it's all negative. I think that we're potentially limited as well with school configurations and how much space is actually available depending on what the districts will look like. So really I see this as more of a question on what are you going to do when it's time to redistrict with another school involved. And that conversation needs to be had very bluntly in front of everybody so that all stakeholders, parents, the Citywide PTO, the Quincy Education Association, school committee members, and the rest of the city of Quincy have a full understanding of what redistricting will look like and what grades will be at what schools. So, thank you.
Would you repeat the question?
Yeah. With a new elementary school coming online during your term, will you leverage this opportunity to standardize grade configuration between the elementary schools across the city?
The new elementary school, I would bring in every stakeholder to discuss the issues. Parents, administrators, teachers, the students, and be very upfront with them on this issue. I don't think it would be a problem necessarily if it's approached in the right way. It could be, again, we could tie this into diversity. This could be an example of diversity and bringing in those different students. They're new students. They're interesting. Let's talk to them. They could be, a group of people we've never met before. And we could entertain the idea that there are diverse student populations that we're now going to meet. And I think that would be a way to handle it, but I don't think there would be a problem.
Could you read that one more time?
With a new elementary school coming online during your term, will you leverage this opportunity to standardize grade configuration between elementary schools across the city?
As the only person sitting on the stage right now that has children in the Quincy Public School system and whose kids went through feature middle school, I personally see the value of my children going K through 5 at the elementary level. So, and I did see the actual changes in my children when they moved on 6th grade, 6 to 8 here. So I think, Courtney and Scott, that's a laudable goal, and that I think that the school committee should have that discussion, and we should have a public dialogue around that. I just want to say one thing about redistricting, because when we bring a new school on, has anybody changed their polling location in the last decade where they vote? There's a couple of hands up. So when you change your polling location, people tend to get a little bit troubled. When you change your neighborhood school, the same thing is going to happen. So that will be one of the big defining issues, I think, over the course of the next 4 or 5 years in terms of school boundaries and where they are and who goes to what school. I mean, we're fortunate to have a new high school, a new middle school, another new middle school coming online, possibly Squantum as well, and then I know the mayor's in the process down in West Quincy. But these are big defining issues that are going to make some seismic impacts on our student population over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. If we don't get it right now, it's going to make a difference for all the kids. So having that dialogue at this moment is the right time.
So this is an issue that I've been working on for 7 years, or at least been talking about for 7 years. 7 years ago, we hosted our first community meeting for the new Sterling Middle School, and it was going to be originally at 4 to 8. Most of the parents in the room were opposed to it. Some of them are in this room today. Some of them, myself, went out and collected signatures to keep it its current grade configuration of 5 to 8, even though we would like to see it go back to 6 to 8, along with Cliff and Marshall and Point as well. But you know, there will be most likely a new school opening up in West Quincy, and it's like dropping, you know, a bubble right in the middle, a rock into a pond. It's going to scatter the district lines. You know, Anthony, you mentioned, you know, we should have, you know, you said that having lower grades in a middle school is okay, and you know, you have a reason for that. But when 7 years ago, when we started talking about it, all they wanted to talk about was how they were going to keep the 4th and the 5th grades separate from the rest of the school, because they didn't think that the 4th and 5th graders were developmentally ready to be with the 6th to 8th grade. Separate start times, separate entrances, everything separate, nothing together. So I don't see any developmental increase going on there. But I would support changing the grade configurations, redrawing the district lines in West Quincy in a way that makes it equal and spreads you know, the diversity across West and Quincy Point.
Thank you. Generally, I support having standard K through 5 for all of the elementary schools. I think that that is best practice. I think that that's what most other schools, districts do around Quincy. If we're going to have the discussion, it's a great discussion to have. As everyone up here has said, bring in all the necessary stakeholders, hear all the different sides. Because I understand that you can make an argument for some pros. You know, one-size-all approach is not always the best, especially when we're in a city the size of Quincy. You may have some 5th graders who are more advanced socially, academically, physically, and maybe if it was one open enrollment school that started at 5th grade, that might make some sense in terms of middle school. Have some of those students, if they were interested, be able to attend those, because maybe you're able to access some of the other programs that happen at the middle school that don't happen at the elementary schools. But it's going to be a discussion, and it's going to have to really come down to numbers. And I just want to make sure that we're looking ahead in our city, looking at trends in terms of enrollment, looking at trends in neighborhoods of population growth, and really getting our hands around this ahead of time, so it's not this discussion that all of a sudden comes up, you know, at a school committee meeting that maybe is not the best publicized meeting, and now parents are left afterwards upset that some of this discussion didn't happen in as transparent a way as possible. So when we have that discussion, we want to make sure that we're involving everyone and getting the word out, and then coming to a best possible solution.
So, excuse me. So I believe that there is some benefit there can be some benefit to having fifth graders in middle schools. I don't think it's the worst thing that we could have done. I think that the schools have done it very, very thoughtfully. I think that the curriculum has been the same across the district, no matter where the students are in school. I think we've done a really good job of that. But I also want to say that at least for the past 8 years, I know that the school committee has looked annually at opportunities and challenges, where we look very, very hard at the data of where the kids are, what the enrollment looks like, what schools are looking like they're too crowded, and we have talked about this redistricting. We may have to do it, we'll certainly have to do it if we open a new school, but you need to understand what these ramifications are. If we redistrict, if we open a school in West Quincy, we take some pressure off of Montclair, and then maybe that takes some pressure off of Parker, and that will definitely take some pressure off of Beechwood. So it's not going to be just one school that's going to be affected by this. When we redistrict, if we have to redistrict, it's going to have a lot of repercussions. So we really do have to be very transparent about it, and people have to understand it. But people also have to understand that it's difficult to no longer go to the school that your cousins went to or your neighbors went to. It's difficult. It's a very, very emotional thing. When they open a school or when they close a school, it's very, very difficult. So I think people are going to have issues with it no matter what we do, but the school committee has to make those kind of decisions. They're not easy decisions to make, but you try to make sure that things are equitable across the city.
Thank you. We have one more question that's going to be for everyone to answer, but before we get to that, we're going to go to our individual questions. Okay, so each of these questions will be specifically for each candidate. Okay, so we're going to start with Ms. Manning. You speak a lot about broadening and deepening the curriculum in interdisciplinary courses. How specifically will you, as a school committee member, make those changes?
That's a good question. Because as a school committee member, I've watched the television, the meetings, and I feel like the school committee is not involved telling the people what's going on. And I feel that I know that the school committee goes to various meetings, but I don't think they share what they're learning or what they're deciding. They don't give the background on why they decide the way they do. I think that is a problem. And if you were developing interdisciplinary courses, you would bring, I would think as a member of the school committee, I could send out a letter to all the teachers and ask them, do they feel they are in any way qualified to teach, let's say, math and art, or one half of it. And they may feel, yes, they'd be willing to teach math, and we'd have to get an art teacher to teach art. We'd have to work that out, and that would be difficult, but I think not impossible to do. So I think as a member of the school committee, it could be done if the mayor supported it. I don't know whether he would. That's a good question.
This question is for Mr. Gutro. As a city councilor, outside of voting to approve the budget, what is a specific action or step you took to improve education in Quincy Public Schools?
I just want to respond to something that Emily said in the prior round about standardizing quickly on K through 5. I agree wholeheartedly about the chain reaction in other schools. I think that that's one of the things that we all have to look at. And I know that there needs to be a thorough space analysis that has to be looked at all the schools. So it is, idealism increases in direct proportion to your distance from the problem. You gotta get a little bit closer. So as a city councilor, one more time, Scott, as a city councilor.
Yes. As a city councilor, outside of voting to approve the budget, what is a specific action or step you took to improve education in Quincy Public Schools?
This is the body that works day in, day out. The school committee is the body that works day in, day out to deal with education policy in the city of Quincy. So I have been blessed to have the opportunity to vote on appropriations that have led to improvements in every school within the city that have come before the city council. But it's the school committee that's the education body. And don't get me wrong, all of those votes that I've cast, I'm proud of, that have had meaningful impacts on children and on teachers every single day, with new schools, with improvements to, as I said, roofs, windows, boilers in a lot of schools. The security that we've invested in a number of the schools. All of those votes came before the city council. We had to contemplate. But when it comes to curriculum and some of the important issues that affect the children day to day, those are the decisions that are made. What happens within the school building is in the purview of the school committee. What happens outside of the school building, even the school grounds, is in the purview of the city council. So I'm proud of all of the actions and votes that I've taken to benefit education, and I hope to continue to do it inside the school building as a member of the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is going to be for Mr. Jacobs. Do you feel that teachers' voices are well represented on the school committee, and how would you empower their voices to be further heard?
Well, I do feel that we do have a former educator on the school committee currently, and I know that she does know a lot of the school teachers, but and a lot of them are retired. But I wonder sometimes if the teachers that are currently working, the newer teachers, the teachers like myself who have been working for the last 10 years, are the ones who are in the classroom, the ones who are going to spend the next 30 years of their life in one of these buildings, are heard. Can you repeat the question again? Go ahead, please.
Gotta flip back. Do you feel that the teachers' voices are well represented on the school committee, and how would you further empower their voices to be heard?
So I think that school teachers' voices could be more heard. I think that one thing you could do is to allow some open dialogue between school committee and teachers. I know that I've been at school events and I've open houses this year, and I've seen school committee members there talking to teachers. But sometimes I wonder the comfortability that an educator in the Quincy Public Schools might have talking to a school committee member, bringing their concerns to the school superintendent instead. So I would encourage, at least a meeting or two a year where it's just school committee and school teachers, no administration present, where they can get up and voice their concerns about things that they like, just like a debrief after maybe at the end of the year, what their concerns are heading into the year, at the beginning of the school year, what the outcome was at the end of the year, kind of like a debrief after the school year ends. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is for Mr. Sauter. In your campaign literature, you emphasize that you're the candidate representing families with young children. Your children are 3 and 1 year old, not yet old enough for Quincy Public Schools. How confident are you that you understand the issues at all levels, K through 12, with no direct experience?
Well, I'm never going to have all the answers right off the bat. We're blessed in this district with having incredibly dedicated and committed members of the school system, the teachers, the administrators. So they're the experts. They're the ones who have the full grasp of all the issues. What I've pledged to do is work with these individuals and research issues and analyze issues. And that's the training that I have as an attorney, and the ability to digest and analyze complicated issues. That's what I do on a daily basis, and that's what I would try to bring to the school committee. I'm able to get up to speed very quickly, I think, on the issues that affect K through 12, as you mentioned. So yes, my children are not yet there into the schools, but my family, through my work with the Marymount Association, has met with and friends with and neighbors with people who have their children in the school system, K through 12. And that's really the main reason that pushed me to get into this race, is I was hearing from countless of these friends and neighbors about some of the issues that they had with the schools. And I said, well, you know, I've been able to turn around and improve the neighborhood association, even not having any background running something like that, not having any background starting a new program with the Quincy Rec Department. And so I said, well, you know, I can take some of those intangibles that I believe I have and put that to work with the school district. So that's what I would try to do, learn the issues, analyze the issues, and then try to get things moving in the right direction. Thank you.
This question is for Ms. Lebo. Please describe an initiative you supported in a previous term on school committee that didn't turn out the way you hoped, and how it could have or should have gone differently.
I think everything always turns out the way I hoped. If I'm successful, Scott, I think I'm going to have to work on this one, try to think of something. It didn't work out the way I had hoped. Oh, I have one, and it's actually from this school year. At the end of last year, both of the high school athletic directors resigned from their positions. No one knew what was going to happen after that. The mayor had something that he wanted to happen. The mayor has a lot of influence in the city. The mayor wanted 2 athletic directors. And he came to the school committee over the summer and he said, I'll give you another $100,000 in your budget and you can hire a second athletic director. I want to say a lot of really nice things about the mayor, but I'm just going to say this one thing wasn't the nicest thing. But I'm going to say it anyway. So we thought about this long and hard, and this was over the summer. And we said the mayor doesn't get to decide what our budget is. That's how we deliberate about what the budget is. And so we worked out a deal. We said, if you can keep the budget the same and still get 2 athletic directors out of the current budget, we'll support that. But if you have $100,000, give it to us and we'll decide what to do with it. And I'm happy to say that we got 2 athletic directors, but I'm unhappy to say we didn't get the $100,000. So.
Our next question is from Mr. Andronico. Oftentimes, school committee is seen as a stepping stone in Quincy politics. There's also a significant learning curve in understanding the issues to be an effective school committee member. What are your personal political goals in running for school committee?
First of all, thank you for your question. You know, I understand that my own background doesn't look like what you might necessarily think of when you think of someone that's running for school committee. You know, I get it. You know, I'm a younger guy. I don't have any kids in the system. So you look at me and you say, okay, well, why? You know, and one of the things that I learned when I was at Emmanuel College, the mission of that college was to do everything that you could do to make sure that your own community is as great as it can be. And my first job, again, out of college, was at a nonprofit organization, Mass Insight Education, where we worked to close the achievement and opportunity gap in gateway cities across Massachusetts. And while I'm no longer there, you know, I still enjoyed the work. The reason that I had left that position was because there weren't a ton of opportunities for growth for myself. There's only so high you can go in a smaller business. So I had to seek other opportunities. But that didn't mean that my passion for solving problems in education went away. And I was the first person to announce that they were running for school committee this term. And I did that before knowing anyone was going to step away. I did that because I wanted to help Quincy, and I thought that this was the best chance for me to help my hometown about issues that I actually care about. So thank you for your question, and that's my answer.
All right, now we'll go back to a question for everybody on the panel. We'll start with Mr. Gutro. What is or should be the main purpose of school committee, and why are you best qualified to serve on school committee?
The Quincy School Committee is a policy-making body around education for the city of Quincy. There's a staff. There are over 1,000 teachers for sure, and then probably upwards of 400 or 500 more part-time teachers, substitute teachers, and there's faculty and staff that participate in everyday operations of school activities. So the school committee is really, it's the governing body, it's the policy-making body, and that's the primary purpose. And it's also, its role is to ensure the fair and appropriate allocation of funding that the mayor proposes for them to educational priorities. And there are hopefully educational priorities that are fully vetted throughout the city, through some of the PTOs. I know that unlike the city council, the school committee has an open forum, so you have a voice, you have an opportunity to come before and give an open voice. And what makes me qualified is the question, because for 14 years I've worked on a deliberative body. I've worked with 8 other members of the city council to advance legislation, to take action, and to get results. And I believe that I've been endorsed by 8 of my colleagues on the city council in my bid for school committee. And I believe that I can earn the trust and respect of my colleagues on the school committee and advance some of the issues that are important to the parents and the teachers in neighborhood schools across the city. Thank you.
Well, I think the main purpose for the school committee, it is, as Doug said, a policy-making board for the school department. It's the city's representative to the schools. I mean, you heard it here from a few people, the numbers. Like 1/3 of the budget of the city is spent in schools, and parents should have a board, a place where they can go to air concerns or desires, wishes for their tax dollars to be spent. I mean, this is money that came from them, was given to the city and is being spent on our children. And the parents really, like I said, should have a way to give their input in the way the city is spending that money.
So I think the main purpose, the main priority for the school committee is for its members to work in a collaborative manner, to advocate on behalf of Quincy students, to make sure that they receive the best possible education in a safe and secure environment. So that's the overarching priority for the school committee. Why do I think I have some experience with that? Well, I have worked in a collaborative manner as the president of the Marymount Neighborhood Association with a board of, we have 15 different members on that board. There are, and there are people that have been in the neighborhood for 30, 40 years. There are people who have moved into the neighborhood in the last 2 years. So there are people who have different perspectives, different ideas, but we also have a main priority, and that's to make sure that we're running our neighborhood the best we can. So I have to bring all those ideas together. I have to bring different people's perspectives together, and I have to come to an end solution and way to manage our goals. So that's what I would try to be doing on the school committee, working with my colleagues, offering my input and expertise and background where I can. Also, I think the school committee, one of the main goals that they have is to champion and celebrate some of these successes of Quincy Public Schools, of its students, of its teachers. And I'd love to be involved with that. And I think that we can do better as a school district with that by increasing updating our website, increasing our communication. So I'd love to be involved in that area as well on the school committee. Thank you.
You want to answer that question?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think the purpose of the school committee, the purpose of the schools is teaching and learning, and I think that's the most important thing we do. I think if you look at the superintendent's chart that Doug put up before, that I referenced before, the most important thing is what takes place in the classroom. When I was first elected to the school committee, I saw all the subcommittees. A lot of work was done in subcommittees, but there was no subcommittee around teaching and learning. There was facilities, there was safety, there was policy, there was budget, but nobody was looking at teaching and learning. And I asked if we could start the first subcommittee on teaching and learning. And the work that committee has done, and even not under my leadership, but under Barbara's leadership even more so, the work that committee has done in looking at all the data, looking at the kids, looking at the outcomes from our schools, looking at the equity issue across the district, the work that subcommittee does is phenomenal. We look at every single school's improvement plan, and we read through them, we discuss it, we push back at the students, at the teachers, and the administrators. I mean, last time Barbara actually took this a step further and actually had some outcomes to be developed around some of the schools that needed to have some support in their improvements. And that work has been really phenomenal. So I think the most important thing is teaching and learning. That's what we're all about. Why do I think I'm qualified? I'm a career educator. I taught in the Quincy Public Schools. I'm a nurse, but I taught in the Quincy Public Schools for 12 years. I was an administrator in Quincy for 8 and an administrator in Boston for 8. I have a master's in administration. I have my teaching credentials. I'm licensed in about 5 or 6 areas. I'm a career educator, and I have 6 grandchildren in the schools, and I love Quincy Public Schools. So that's why I come here.
Thank you. I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question? I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
What is or should be the main purpose of school committee, and why are you best qualified to serve on school committee?
Okay, thank you. I mean, the number one purpose of the school committee is to make sure that we're supporting positive student outcomes. I mean, everyone comes into our system, and they're at different starting points. And it's the job of the school committee to make sure that our teachers and that our policies are in place to ensure that our students get the best possible outcome, that they're able to achieve whatever they'd like to achieve after they exit our system, whether they'd like to enter the workforce immediately, serve in our military, or continue their education in whatever they see fit. Our job is to support that endeavor for after they exit the system. You know, as far as achieving that goal, I think that I'm the best qualified individual to do it because I was just there. I'm the only candidate up here that's been through this system within the last decade. I understand what it's like to be one of those students. I understand what challenges they currently face. And not only that, but over the last 2+ years or so, I've had the opportunity to work closely to actually achieve those goals in cities across the state of Massachusetts. Thank you.
I guess my way would be a little different. I would first of all have office hours in the public library, and I would announce them way in advance so that people would know I'm always there on Friday afternoons and I'm always there on Saturdays, so that people could come and tell me if there's something wrong in their schools, or if there's something they want to salute. That's a good thing. I would also go and meet the teachers and the administrators, and I would try to meet as many of the students as I could, because these are different constituencies and they have different points of view. And I think to get the full benefit of their different points of view, I need to do this. And then I would collectively work with my colleagues. I was on 14 committees, God help us at Suffolk, and I did all that work nicely. And I think then I would have a good understanding of the schools, and I would have a good understanding of the various groups in the schools.
Okay, because you all stuck to the 90 seconds so well, we actually have time for one more. Really exciting here. All right, so this is going to be the last question, and we're going to start with Mr. Jacobs. Are there any additional things we could be doing on the school committee to make sure that there is equal access to both special education and advanced programs for all students in all schools?
Thank you. So that is something that I've heard quite a bit about from people. Ironically, not when you knock on their doors, it's when you stand out in front of a Dunkin' Donuts. Those are the people that they answer those questions. You know, I think that there is such a strong process, for making your way into special ed. You have to be, tested, and I think the city does, a pretty fine job doing that. They're mandated, to do it. They're mandated to carry out the IEP once it's been written. I think there are some things, some programs that are offered to students, some social inclusion activities that are kind of put out there for parents, and it's not written into the IEP, but it's kind of promised, that their child will receive, we'll go into a general education classroom and spend, an hour there a day, and I think that they, if it gets too difficult, that they pull away from that too easily. The kids don't get the hour that, that is recommended. As for, students on the other end who are looking for advanced classes, I think we could do a much better job. We have the lab program that's here at Central, but what I hear from other parents is, it's great that it's here, but, that they feel that they wish there were more seats, and they wish that there were seats, in their local school district. So I think we should be looking at how we can spread the program out away from one school, one magnet school, and putting it in other schools. Thank you.
In terms of special education, what I've heard from numerous people across the city is that Erin Perkins is doing a great job with the program. She's a strong and knowledgeable leader. So I think that we have someone there that is very knowledgeable, and we'd love to support her with any other programs that she comes to the table with. I think special education would also be boosted if we expanded pre-K in the city. If you have more children into the school system at an earlier age, you're better able to diagnose any special education issues. So that's something that I think that we could put our support behind. Working closely with the Quincy Parent Advisory Council for Special Education, they do great work. They're very committed. So I always want to make sure that they have a voice at the school committee. One thing I've heard also from numerous parents is that they really, really have to fight to make sure that that their children are receiving, the necessary special education assistance. And I worry for parents who don't have the ability to make that fight. Working multiple jobs, single parents that don't speak English as their first language. So I want to make sure that we're not losing any of those children and have a focus on that. In terms of advanced students with some advanced education, definitely think that we have a good number of AP programs. One thing I've heard is that our late start, that somewhat hurts the kids when they take their AP test in May. So if there'd be any way we could start in the summer with at least some optional coursework for those AP students, and definitely would love to increase the college, the ability for high school students to obtain college credits as well, help with the college burden. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question? Yes, I can. Are there any additional things we could be doing on the school committee to make sure that there is equal access to both special education and advanced programs for all students in all schools?
So I'm not really sure what we're trying to get at, because some programs are placed at some schools. Is that what you were thinking, Courtney?
Just to kind of all levels of schools, to just kind of, if there's anything additional that you could see the school committee could do to address either issue at elementary level.
So one of the things the school committee did just last year was make sure that we had inclusion classes for juniors and seniors at both high schools. Because what was happening at one of our high schools was this inclusion class was going away after the sophomore year when the students passed the MCAS. And then the students were not getting enough support in the 11th and 12th grade when they still needed it. So we did work on that at the school committee, and we deliberated about that. We had the special educators from both schools come in. We worked with Ms. Perkins on it, and I'm happy to say that inclusion classroom is back in the 11th and 12th grade at the other high school. As far as the advanced placement goes, we now have advanced placement at every single one of our middle schools, including science, in grades 6, 7, and 8. It started out with just English and math, and now it's in science. One of the problems with the program at Central is you could be a brilliant mathematician, but if you don't speak English very well, you wouldn't get into the Central program. And therefore, those kids were not having access to a higher level, more challenging mathematics courses when they couldn't handle them. So when they have now put those AP courses down into all of the middle schools, every student in Quincy who can get into those classrooms and can handle that level of challenge is offered the opportunity to take advanced placement at their home schools.
Thank you. So I'd say regarding special education access, the processes that we have in place need to be clearly communicated to everyone, whether they speak English or otherwise. And part of that initiative goes down to where can I find the information on these programs. It goes back right to revamping the Quincy Public Schools website to make sure that information is accessible to everyone in any language that they that they speak, that they read. So as far as special education access is concerned, it's really just about communication to all of your constituents. And regarding AP placement, I mean, again, we have those programs across the entire city, as Emily had just mentioned. So there's really not much that I can speak to as far as continuing to improve the AP process here. I do want to mention something that David had brought up regarding IEPs in students. And I think it's important to realize that we want to make sure that one particular classroom or teacher isn't overloaded with students that are on IEPs. It's an incredibly intensive and difficult thing to carry out when you have a bunch of students on an IEP in we'll say one 4th grade class, but in the other 4th grade class there aren't as many. I think making sure that there's an even split between students on IEPs, between teachers in a certain grade level, is something that's important to keep in mind so that one particular teacher isn't overwhelmed. So yeah, that's fine.
With regard to special education, I've had already some complaints from parents, and I told them to go to the school committee and talk to them, and they were afraid to. And I wondered why. And so I said to them I would try to find space and time to get an ombudsman so that they wouldn't have to go and speak to the school committee, but the ombudsman can go. I was really quite horrified with what I heard. In terms of advanced placement students, I would say that we have a lot of programs for those students. We need to know if they feel they're working well. I might do a study of the AP programs to see if they're working well. I don't know. I'm sort of taken back by your question, but it's a good idea. Okay.
I just want to echo the comment on Erin Perkins. Everywhere I go, people have high marks for her, so I think she's doing a great job sped-wise. When I was a ward counselor, I used to say that the role of the ward counselor is to help people access city government to get answers or action. They may not always be happy, but they get answers or action. One of the things that I want to do as a member of the school committee is to do what I did for the neighborhood schools. In other words, go out, sit, listen, and be as helpful as possible and bring some of those concerns back. And I think I have a skill set that can help affect some of those changes. I sense that there's frustration with folks about the centralized system. In some cases, programs are located in certain schools. There's a long history. There's probably a lot of issues, and I know that there's an extraordinary benefit to having programs centralized in certain locations so that some parents have to go across the city to access those programs. That's not easily undone, but there's a benefit to each of the children because of the way that it's set up. So I think that has to be articulated, and as much help as can be offered to the parent, I think, is necessary. The advanced program, I think across, that Emily stated, across the middle schools, I think that's exceptional. I think there was a hunger and an appetite from parents throughout the city not to have to traipse their child across the city here to Central. So it's a good thing for the city.
Thank you. Just wanted to make one, clarification on what that question was going for. The middle school advanced program, there's a lot of opportunity for middle schoolers to have different level courses, but as we can all kind of figure out, kids don't get smart when they graduate 5th grade into 6th grade. Kids don't get smart when they graduate 4th grade into 5th grade. Kids, those type of kids need challenges all the way through. So kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, all those grades, we need to be looking at that a little bit too. That was where that one was coming from. So, to turn over here.
Thank you all. So what we're going to do is we're going to move now to closing remarks. And so we'll have closing remarks. We'll start with Ms. Lebo. And go from there.
Okay, thank you, Scott. First of all, I want to say a few things before I get into why I think I'd like you to vote for me. I first want to say that the mayor and the city council have put a lot of money into the schools outside of our budget, and I think that Doug, you didn't take enough credit for that, but there have been appropriations for things like school buses and technology and the safety and security that have come from the mayor's office and the city council that do not come out of our budget and allow us to keep our budget focused on education. The other thing, when the question about the Quincy teachers and communicating with them, we have a president of the QEA who is unbelievably communicative with the school committee. I don't think any of her teachers are afraid to talk to her, and she's not afraid to talk to us. So there is an enormous amount of trust there. The other thing I want to say about the school committee meetings, if you don't think that they're all that informative, the reason for that is most of the work is done at subcommittee meetings. That's where the work is done. It takes a long time to do that work, to go through that data, to look at the enrollment, to look at the school outcomes. The work is done at subcommittee meetings, and the reports come to the school committee. The other thing I want to say is that we do have an ombudsman. It's called the Quincy Parent Advisory Council. It's mandated by the state, and the parents get to talk to them, and then they bring their concerns to the school system. So a lot of that stuff already exists. So I'm sorry that I had to get that out. But anyway, I would really love to come back to the school committee and continue my work. I love the Quincy Public Schools. I have 6 grandchildren in the schools. I think that I add value. I don't think that you need 6 of me on the school committee, but I do think that I add value. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to push for my agenda. I love to work collaboratively with people, and I've had the joy of working collaboratively. Kathy Hoogley's in the audience today, as is Barbara, working collaboratively with my colleagues on the school committee, and I would love to be able to continue the work I've started. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just jump right into my closing remark instead. The 3 things that I'm really looking to get done, again, if I'm lucky enough to be elected to the Quincy School Committee, is to increase the opportunities that our students have to gain college credit so that they can get ahead in life. So that I'd also like to maintain smaller class sizes in the face of growing enrollment. And I'd like to implement better communication practices from the school committee to our constituents. Those are the 3 things that I'd like to do. I think that my background as the only candidate that's actually gone through this system within the last decade is incredibly valuable. And since my time in college, I've worked across the state to close the achievement and opportunity gap in gateway cities. You know, I'm not a lifelong educator. I haven't run for mayor here in the city, and I'm not a lawyer, right? But I sincerely believe that my background adds significant value to a well-rounded school committee. And that's what you need in every crop of candidates, is a well-rounded school committee. And I'm the only one with this particular background. Thank you.
I'm interested in opening up the process so that everybody gets a chance to know what's going on. I think the school committee seems much too close down to an outsider looking at television as their main source of information. I think opening it up would be good. I don't think there's anything to hide. I think letting people know where we're at as a school committee is the thing to do. I also think that to some degree, we need to bring people in so that for those people who are available to the schools, they volunteer or they say they could do. For example, one of the questions that I was asked earlier about math and art. One of the situations that I met a person who was in the schools as a teacher, and she taught an art course, and she brought in various other specialties so that the kids could realize that art is connected to mathematics and to science and she said she got an awful lot of good feedback from this, and she wished she could teach it again, but she retired. So we could have those kinds of things if people were willing to come and say to us, you know, I've got some background, I've heard you doing interdisciplinary work, I'd like to do some work with you. That would be a good thing. Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank Citywide, and especially Scott and Courtney and all the members for putting together those tough questions and for sponsoring really, you know, the first Citywide debate for school committee candidates. So thank you very much. I'd also like to give a special shout out to all the folks representing PTOs from across the city, the leaders or the members of the PTOs or the parents that are out there for coming out tonight and taking the opportunity, this unique moment to hear from 6 candidates running for 3 seats. So thank you very much. A shout out to Barbara Isola and Kathy Hugley, current members of the school committee. Again, thank you for coming out and listening to the debate and discussion, and for all others that are here tonight that simply want to cast a vote to improve schools. If I'm lucky enough to be one of your 3 votes on election night, there are 4 things that I'm going to bring. Number 1, I have the lens of a parent. I'm the one that every day, like you, spends time in the classroom or at the kitchen table or comes to auditoriums like this for concerts, for science fairs, for open houses. Number 2, I bring the experience, 14 years in the city council, supporting educational improvements in schools throughout our city. Number 3, I bring the insight of someone that's taught at the college level since 1999, so I see the classroom not just through the lens of a parent, but also a teacher. And number 4, a commitment. A commitment, just like I did when I served on the council, to do my homework, to visit each neighborhood school, to listen to parents and teachers, and to bring their concerns back before the Quincy School Committee. We have a terrific crop of candidates here, and it's a privilege to be able to sit here and share our experiences and ideas. On November 7th, you can vote for 3 members of the Quincy School Committee. I humbly ask to be one of your 3 votes. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank everyone again for your time coming out here on this busy night to attend the only school committee candidates night. And I want to thank the Citywide PTO for hosting this event and to all the school PTOs who do all the hard work of advocating for their child's schools. I decided to run for school committee to make access to programs more equitable across the district so that students don't have to pick between required courses and courses they want to take. And so that teachers don't have to quarrel as to whether or not students should miss class to attend another. I am running to make Quincy Public Schools a place where teachers work in an environment where they feel they and their discipline is a valued part of the curriculum, and where students' educational requirements and desired elective studies both take precedent. I am running to be your voice on the Quincy School Committee. I have over a decade's experience working in public education, 5 of those years working directly with students who have severe disabilities. And I'm glad to say that I've spent the last 5 years working with a parent group here, the Quincy Band Boosters, helping to advocate for music education and to fundraise to give students here in Quincy an experience, an educational experience that they would not otherwise have. I urge all of you to vote on November 7th. And I encourage you to get your family members and friends out to the polls as well. And I ask that you consider casting one of your 3 votes for school committee for me. Thank you.
So I'm going last, and that's a good reminder that I'm last on the ballot also, so I'll just use that to pitch that. But thank you all for attending tonight. Thank you to Citywide for hosting. It's very time-consuming, and I know a lot of hard work goes into putting a forum like this together. So thank you, because this really is important. There is also Thursday night on QATV. There is also going to be a televised debate for the school committee. So if you're looking to really get your school committee candidate fix in, I'm not sure which channel QATV it is, but tune in. So I just would say this: if elected to the school committee, I would pledge to bring fresh ideas, perspective, and energy to ensure that our children, our schools, and our educators are best prepared for the challenges and the opportunities of the 21st century. Quincy is a city with dedicated people. It's a city with rich history. It's a city also with a bright future. The question earlier about diversity in the schools, that really struck me, because that's one of the best parts of this city, and it's also one of the best parts of our school system. I look forward to having my children come through our school system. I look forward to having them meet with students from around the world who have different backgrounds, because that's what our world is today. That's what Boston is. That's what all across the world, where they're going to be graduating and moving into a multicultural system. So that's something that we really need to celebrate here in Quincy. On the school committee, I think it's vitally important to have people and have it be made up of people with different backgrounds who bring different things to the table. I think that my track record as a community leader, as the president of the Marymount Association, as an activist for Quincy's youth with putting together a new program for Quincy's toddlers, and also my legal background would benefit the school committee. I think that that makes me qualified to be one of the 3 representatives that you can vote for on November 7th. So I look forward to discussing the ideas the rest of the evening out in the atrium, and would humbly ask for your consideration for one of your 3 votes on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That ends the moderated question and answer part of the candidates night. Again, on behalf of Courtney and I, and the many members of Citywide, we would like to thank the school committee candidates for all their thoughtful responses, and to all of you for attending. We would also like to thank the staff in the Central QPS office, specifically Laura and Doreen, and the staff at Central for their assistance with tonight's event. We received a number of great questions from parents that unfortunately we did not have time to ask tonight. We will assemble these questions and send to the school committee candidates in hopes of posting their responses on our Citywide Facebook page. If you have questions that came out of tonight's candidates night that you would like to see addressed by the candidates, please email Courtney and I at pto.citywide@gmail.com. If you're able, please stay around and enjoy some refreshments and continue the conversations with the candidates and with each other. But before we convene, if we can just sing a quick happy birthday to my fellow co-president, Courtney Perdios, whose birthday is today, I would really appreciate that. And if you could all sing loud, because I have a microphone here and nobody wants to hear me as the loudest. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Courtney. Happy birthday to you. Thank you all.
So I just wanted, before you leave, if anybody wants to see what that essay looked like, I have copies of what we sent into the state and what their response was, if you'd like to see it, so it's pretty interesting.